There's a moment in life that many of my patients over 50 describe with a mix of surprise and frustration. One day, climbing stairs or rising from a chair feels effortless, and the next, it's as if the body has quietly swapped out smooth gears for rusty hinges. The bones that once felt unshakable now whisper with aches, and the joints that allowed graceful movement start to resist like a stubborn door in winter. Yet the truth is, this change doesn't arrive suddenly. It has been building quietly, invisibly for years. The good news is, we have more control than we think. I'm Dr. Brian, and welcome to Channel Wellness Blueprint Over 50. Today we'll journey into the remarkable world of vitamins, not as pills in a bottle, but as silent architects of strength and resilience. Because when you feed your bones and joints properly, you feed your independence, your vitality, and your freedom. When I think about vitamin D and calcium, I often picture a team of builders working side by side. One lays the bricks, the other mixes the mortar, and without both, the structure cannot stand. Calcium is the brick, the very material of bone itself, while vitamin D is the worker who makes sure those bricks actually get delivered to the right site. Without that delivery system, even the richest supply of bricks will sit unused, and the walls of the house will remain fragile. That's why I call vitamin D and calcium the cornerstone duo of bone health. Let me tell you about Margaret, a patient of mine in her late 60s. She was a retired teacher who loved gardening, but came to me complaining of persistent hip pain. She was shocked to learn her bone density scan showed early osteoporosis. Margaret had always taken care of her diet, lots of vegetables, plenty of dairy, so why were her bones thinning? The missing piece was vitamin D. She lived in a northern climate, avoided the sun, and hadn't been supplementing. Once we restored her vitamin D levels, her calcium intake finally had the chance to do its job. Within a year, her bone density began to improve, and she was back kneeling in her garden with joy. The science behind this is fascinating but simple. Calcium builds the framework of bones, but the body can't absorb it efficiently without vitamin D. Think of vitamin D as the key that unlocks the door, allowing calcium to pass from the intestines into the bloodstream and onward into the bones. Without that key, calcium passes through unused. A study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition demonstrated that older adults with sufficient vitamin D levels had a significantly lower risk of fractures, even when their calcium intake was only moderate. In contrast, those who took calcium without vitamin D didn't see nearly the same protection. It's this synergy, not the nutrients in isolation, that truly strengthens the skeletal foundation. For those of us over 50, the stakes are high. Bones naturally thin with age, becoming more like delicate porcelain than sturdy oak. A simple fall that once meant a bruise can now mean a hip fracture, and with it, the risk of losing independence. But imagine if we could change that story, if by tending to this nutritional duo, we could walk with confidence, climb stairs without fear, and keep dancing at family weddings well into our 70s and 80s. That possibility is not a fantasy. It's a very real outcome when these nutrients are properly cared for. So where do they come from? Calcium hides in familiar places: milk, cheese, yogurt, almonds, leafy greens. Vitamin D is trickier. Sunlight is the most natural source, yet our skin's ability to produce it fades with age, and modern life often keeps us indoors. That's why fortified foods like cereals and dairy, or in some cases a daily supplement prescribed by a doctor, can be lifesavers. What matters most is not chasing perfection, but ensuring steady, reliable intake. I often remind my patients that caring for bones is like depositing into a retirement account. The earlier and more consistently you invest, the greater the dividends in later years. But even if you're starting at 50, 60, or 70, the body can still respond. Bones can regain density, joints can regain fluidity, and life can regain vibrancy. Margaret is living proof. She often tells me she feels younger now than she did a decade ago, because she no longer worries every step might bring pain or fracture. Strong bones are not just about avoiding injury, they are about claiming freedom. Freedom to travel, to hug grandchildren without fear of falling, to kneel and plant seeds knowing you'll rise again with ease. Vitamin D and calcium together are the quiet guardians of that freedom, and they deserve our daily attention. If vitamin D and calcium are the architects and builders of bone, then vitamin K and vitamin C are like the inspectors and repair crews. They make sure the materials go to the right place, that the scaffolding is reinforced, and that damage is patched before it becomes dangerous. Without them, bones and joints may still stand, but they become vulnerable to cracks and wear far sooner than they should. I'll never forget Harold, a 72-year-old former mail carrier who came to see me after a fall. The x-rays showed no break, which was fortunate, but what concerned me most was his bone scan. Thinning bones despite his good calcium intake. He told me he ate plenty of dairy and fish, but vegetables were not really his thing. When we tested further, his vitamin K levels were low. This was important because vitamin K acts like the traffic cop for calcium. It directs it into the bones and teeth while preventing it from drifting into the arteries, where it doesn't belong. Once Harold began including leafy greens in a modest supplement, his risk profile shifted dramatically. A year later, his bone markers had improved, and more importantly, he felt more stable on his feet. Vitamin K comes in two main forms: K1 found in greens like spinach and kale, and K2 found in fermented foods and certain meats. K1 handles blood clotting, but K2 is the one that ensures calcium ends up in bones rather than hardening arteries. Without enough K2, calcium can become a double-edged sword, strengthening one system while damaging another. A study in the Journal of Nutrition highlighted that people with higher vitamin K intake had denser bones and fewer fractures over time. It's subtle work, but profoundly important. And it reminds us that nutrition is about balance, not single heroes. Now let's bring in vitamin C, which might surprise you. Most people think of vitamin C as the cold-fighting vitamin, the one in citrus fruits that keeps us from sneezing all winter. But its deeper role is in building collagen, the protein scaffolding that holds our bones, tendons, and cartilage together. Imagine collagen as the ropes and nets in a suspension bridge. The steel beams alone would collapse under stress, but with the ropes pulling tension in the right places, the bridge can flex without breaking. In the body, collagen gives bones their resilience and joints their cushioning. Without vitamin C, those ropes fray and movement becomes painful. I had a patient named June, a vibrant grandmother in her late 60s who suffered from aching knees. She feared arthritis was stealing her mobility. While some degeneration was present, we discovered her diet lacked sufficient vitamin C. She rarely ate fruit, and her vegetables were often overcooked, stripping them of nutrients. Once she began including fresh citrus, berries, and bell peppers, her collagen production improved. Within months, she told me she could climb the bleachers at her grandson's baseball games without wincing. It wasn't magic. It was simply her body finally receiving the building blocks it needed for repair. Vitamin C also acts as an antioxidant, cleaning up the rust caused by free radicals that damage cartilage and inflame joints. Think of it as oil for a squeaky hinge. A well-oiled hinge opens smoothly. A neglected one grinds and resists. That's the difference vitamin C can make in joints as we age. Research from the Arthritis Foundation has shown that adequate vitamin C intake helps reduce the risk of developing certain types of arthritis and may slow its progression. Together, vitamin K and vitamin C are the quiet protectors. They don't often make headlines, but they keep the system running smoothly. K keeps calcium honest, guiding it to strengthen rather than harm. C weaves collagen fibers, cushioning joints and giving bones resilience. When these nutrients are missing, bones may look solid on the outside yet be weak within, and joints may grind instead of glide. But when they are abundant, movement feels fluid, strength feels natural, and life regains ease. I often tell my patients that vitamins are like a choir. The beauty doesn't come from one voice alone, but from harmony. Vitamin K and vitamin C, in their quiet harmony, ensure that the powerful work of vitamin D and calcium is not wasted but perfected. And when that harmony is restored in the body, people like Harold and June find themselves moving with confidence again, often surprised at how much life opens up when pain loosens its grip. When I think about vitamin A and vitamin B6, I imagine them as the storytellers and repair workers of the skeleton. Vitamin A shapes the narrative of bone growth and renewal, while vitamin B6 quietly mends the threads that connect muscles, nerves, and connective tissues. Together, they don't just help bones stand strong, they make sure the entire support system works as a unified whole. Vitamin A often gets mentioned in conversations about eyesight, But its role in bone health is profound. Bones are not static. They're living tissue, constantly being broken down and rebuilt in a process called remodeling. Vitamin A acts like the project manager of that cycle, ensuring that old bone is cleared away and new bone is laid down properly. Without it, bones can become brittle, like a wall where the mortar crumbles, but the bricks remain. It may look intact, but under stress, it breaks. I remember Evelyn, a 74-year-old former librarian who came to me with frequent small fractures in her wrists and ribs. She wasn't falling from ladders. She was simply reaching for books or coughing hard during winter colds. Her calcium and vitamin D intake were fine, but her diet lacked brightly colored vegetables, carrots, sweet potatoes, spinach, all rich in vitamin A. Once we introduced those foods, her remodeling process regained balance. Over time, the cycle of breakdown and repair evened out, and the spontaneous fractures stopped. It was as though her bones finally remembered how to rebuild themselves. Vitamin A also contributes to cartilage health, the soft, elastic tissue that cushions joints. Think of cartilage as the shock absorbers in a car. Without them, every bump in the road rattles the vehicle. In the human body, weakened cartilage turns every step into a potential source of pain. Adequate vitamin A keeps those shock absorbers flexible, allowing smooth, pain-free movement. But, and this is vital, too much vitamin A can backfire, leading to bone weakness. Balance is key, which is why I always recommend getting it from foods first and discussing supplements with a doctor. Now let's talk about vitamin B6, which many people have barely heard of. If vitamin A is the project manager, B6 is the electrician keeping the system wired and functional. It's essential for the metabolism of amino acids, the building blocks of proteins like collagen. Without B6, collagen synthesis slows down, and the tendons and ligaments that anchor bones lose strength. Imagine trying to secure a house with ropes that keep fraying. It won't matter how strong the walls are if the supports give way. One patient, Robert, a retired mechanic in his early 70s, often complained of persistent muscle weakness and joint discomfort. He assumed it was simply old age, but testing revealed a deficiency in vitamin B6. His diet was heavy on processed foods and light on whole grains, fish, and legumes, the natural sources of this vitamin. Once he made changes, including eating more salmon, nuts, and beans, the difference was striking. Within months, his coordination improved, his joints ached less, and he began moving with a confidence he thought he'd lost forever. B6 also supports nerve function, which is deeply tied to balance and mobility. When nerves misfire, muscles don't contract or relax properly, and joints bear the brunt. By keeping the communication lines clear, B6 ensures that every step is steady, every grip is firm, and every motion is precise. Scientific studies have linked B6 deficiency to an increased risk of fractures, not because it directly weakens bone, but because it weakens the systems that protect bones from harm. Together, vitamin A and B6 form an underappreciated alliance. A oversees the blueprint of bone remodeling, keeping the skeleton young at heart, while B6 maintains the connections that hold everything together and coordinate movement. When they are lacking, people may feel fragile, unsteady, or prone to mysterious pains that seem to come from nowhere. But when they are present in abundance, strength and stability return, often surprising those who thought their decline was inevitable. I often tell my patients that aging is not a straight slide downward. It's a series of choices, small but powerful, that can shift the trajectory. Adding more colorful vegetables, whole grains, fish, nuts. These are not dramatic changes, but over time, they write a new story in the body. A story where bones renew themselves, where joints bend without complaint, and where the simple act of rising from a chair feels easy again. That's the gift of vitamin A and B6. They don't shout for attention, but quietly, persistently, they restore the rhythm of repair and the strength of connection. And in doing so, they allow us to move through the world not with fear of breaking, but with the grace of knowing our bodies still have resilience to give. If you imagine the body as a finely tuned orchestra, vitamin E and magnesium are the instruments that keep the music smooth and steady. They may not play the loudest notes, but without them, the harmony falls apart. Vitamin E protects, while magnesium empowers. One shields the joints from silent attackers like oxidative stress, and the other fuels the muscles and bones with the energy and balance they need to keep us moving. Together, they allow the music of life to play without interruption. I think of Elaine, a retired nurse in her late 60s, who came to me with constant stiffness in her fingers. She loved knitting blankets for her grandchildren, but arthritis threatened to take that joy away. Blood work showed she wasn't deficient in the obvious vitamins, D, calcium, or even C, but she was low in vitamin E. This vitamin acts as a powerful antioxidant, neutralizing free radicals that chip away at cartilage and inflame joints. Without that protection, the joints become like hinges left out in the rain, slowly rusting until they creak with every move. Once Elaine added more nuts, seeds, and leafy greens to her diet, along with a small supplement, her stiffness eased. She smiled when she told me she was knitting again without pain. A reminder that sometimes the missing piece of the puzzle is the one we least expect. Vitamin E doesn't just fight rust in the joints. It also calms inflammation throughout the body. Chronic inflammation is like a slow-burning fire, consuming tissue quietly over years. For older adults, that fire often settles in the joints, leading to stiffness, swelling, and the kind of pain that keeps people awake at night. By damping the flames, vitamin E restores not just mobility, but also peace of mind. Studies published in Annals of the Rheumatic Diseases have noted its potential in easing arthritis symptoms, offering another layer of natural arthritis pain relief without harsh medications. Now, magnesium is a different kind of hero. If calcium is the brick of bone, magnesium is the scaffolding that holds those bricks together and ensures the structure stands firm. It is required in more than 300 enzymatic reactions in the body, many of them tied directly to energy, muscle contraction, and bone formation. Without magnesium, vitamin D can't activate properly, which means calcium can't do its job. I often describe it to patients as the spark that lights the furnace. Without it, nothing else can burn brightly. One of my patients, Daniel, a 70-year-old who loves cycling, came to me after repeated muscle cramps were cutting his rides short. He assumed it was dehydration, but the real culprit was magnesium deficiency. Once he incorporated magnesium-rich foods, pumpkin seeds, whole grains, and leafy greens, his cramps eased, his stamina improved, and he found himself riding longer and farther than he had in years. He later told me with a grin that he felt 20 again whenever he pedaled down country roads. Magnesium also plays a crucial role in bone density. It regulates parathyroid hormone, which keeps calcium levels balanced in the blood and ensures bones don't leach minerals unnecessarily. Deficiencies in magnesium are common, especially in diets heavy on processed foods, and the consequences can be subtle but serious. Fragile bones, restless sleep, and persistent fatigue. When replenished, however, people often feel an energy they thought age had stolen. Their steps feel lighter, their grip stronger, and their confidence renewed. Together, vitamin E and magnesium don't just prevent decline, they restore vitality. One guards the gates, shielding joints from the corrosive forces of oxidation and inflammation. The other fuels the machinery, keeping muscles, nerves, and bones working in unison. Without them, the music falters. Joints grind, muscles spasm, bones weaken. But with them, life plays on in harmony, allowing us to bend, twist, climb, and embrace the people we love with strength and ease. For many of my patients, the realization that something as small as a handful of almonds or a bowl of spinach could change the way they move through life is liberating. It's proof that the body, even after 50, is not finished learning, healing, or adapting. By honoring these nutrients, we give our bones and joints not just endurance but resilience, the ability to recover, to bend without breaking, to carry us with dignity through the years ahead. And that, I tell my patients, is what true independence feels like. Not the absence of age, but the presence of strength. So here we are, at the end of our journey through the 8 powerful vitamins that quietly shape the strength of our bones and the resilience of our joints. Each one plays its own part, some laying down the bricks of bone, others guiding calcium where it belongs, still others soothing the inflammation that makes movement painful. What matters most is not treating them as isolated pieces, but seeing them as a team working in harmony. When you bring them together through nourishing foods and, when necessary, carefully chosen supplements, you're giving your body the tools to move freely and confidently. Aging doesn't have to mean shrinking into fragility. It can mean standing taller, walking farther, and embracing each day with vitality. You are not too late, and you are not too fragile to reclaim your strength. Your body still wants to support you. Give it what it needs, and it will.